Hello, and welcome to Shocker Family Connections. My name is Tia Hill. I'm Assistant Director in the Office of Student Involvement, and I'm here to welcome you to tonight's program. First of all, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're not familiar with the series, Shocker Family Connections takes place Monday through Saturday, and I think we're on Wednesday, so we're on our third day of this program. And each day features a different topic and set of presenters that are here to educate you on how you can continue to support your student, whether they're on campus or at home or wherever they may be. So today's program is brought to us by Kim Sandlin in the Office of Student Success. And before I introduce her, I will note that we will be taking questions after the presentation. So if you're viewing this from YouTube Live, you'll just need to sign into YouTube and pop those questions into the comment section. And if you're viewing this from Facebook Live, you'll just pop your question into that comment section. I'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation, and I'll be happy to ask any questions you have, and myself or Kim will answer those for you. So now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Kim Sandlin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm glad to be here with you. I was with a group earlier today. Not sure if we have any repeat attendees, but welcome you, whether you're a parent, family member, supporter of one of our new students who might have just joined us this fall, or whether your student is about to graduate. Either way, we welcome you all. And tonight we're going to talk about academic success and support and how your students can maximize their potential for academic success. So if you are a parent of a new student, you probably saw me virtually this summer, maybe with a parent table talk with Alicia Newell, or maybe at orientation. So if you're a repeat attendee again, good to see you all virtually tonight. I want to begin with talking about some of the platforms that your students are probably mastering or feeling like they're mastering, or spending a lot of their time in right now. I'm going to talk about Blackboard, we're going to talk about Zoom, we're going to talk about Teams. It's really important that your students are doing everything that they can to signal to professors that they are engaged with class content, they are paying attention, they're with them during lectures, or they're participating in discussion boards, maybe online. So we'll talk through some of those platforms, and be happy to answer some general questions or point you where you can get some more information, where you can point your student to get more information. Also going to talk a little bit about some study skills. The things that we see most common, give you an example of, again, resources where you can point your student to get some extra help there. Time management is part of that as well. Talk about reaching out for help. So potentially your students may be struggling with content in some of their classes. So how does your student go about connecting with a tutor, requesting a tutor? How do they find out about supplemental instruction that may be accompanying their class? I'll talk through that. And then also want to talk through what our success coaches and peer coaches can do. You probably have heard me say this before. I can give them all the advice that I needed when I was a student here, but lots of times they trust students and their perspectives more than they trust some of us who do this for a living. So we do want to make sure that they know that there are peers out there that can help them, either coaching or mentoring if that's what they need. And we'll talk through those opportunities. And then if time allows, we'll go through just some information, as spring enrollment is right around the corner. We're just now getting to midterms, sort of, still a little early on that, but approaching midterms, I'll say that. And we're already looking forward to enrollment for the spring semester. So we'll talk about how to get ready and set with your advisors and your student schedule for spring. So Let's go back to the top of that list. Let's talk about some of the platforms that your students are probably, again, feeling like they're either mastering or potentially struggling with. And the first one that I want to talk a little bit about is Blackboard. That is our learning management system, and that is where all of their instructors will have placed the information for their classes. So if you're hearing from your student that they don't know where their content is, or they are not sure where to click to get the information on what's supposed to be due or what kind of exam they're going to have, Blackboard is really their answer. And they can connect to Blackboard in two ways. They can connect directly from their student portal. There's the little Blackboard icon at the top right-hand corner of their screen. And they can click and connect that way. Or they can go to blackboard.wichita.edu and they can connect that way as well. So either way, they're going to get in and connected with their Blackboard. Their class content information is going to be under the My Classes section of Blackboard. And your students can't mess anything up. They can't break it. They're not going to be able to rearrange things or make things disappear or those kinds of things. So they shouldn't be scared about clicking around and getting used to it. There's a lot of functionality within Blackboard, and I think our students sometimes are a little overwhelmed if this is the first time that they've used Blackboard. So they're a little shy about clicking on the tabs across the top or looking at all of the help articles that they might have, or using some of the tools that are available to them in their classes right there from Blackboard where they're spending their time. So encourage your student to click on stuff. Their faculty members should have set up the classes in such a way that, again, they can't delete something for the class. They can't rearrange things or anything like that. They're given the student role, which basically means they can see the information when the faculty member wants them to see it, and they're able to submit assignments and take quizzes and tests and things that are loaded up in there. So encourage them to look around and experiment a little bit. A few of the comments that we're getting back from professors are that students aren't knowing how to look at comments, for instance. They don't know how to or where in Blackboard to find the feedback that their professors are giving them. And so I think Tia's got queued up our website, and I want to show you a place where you can tell your student to go. If they start at the Student Success website, which is wichita.edu/success or Student Success, either one will work. This is our website. Great picture of all of our students when we were able to do orientation in person. When you scroll down, you go a little bit beyond halfway down, and there is right there is a section called Shocker Secrets to Success. And right there, Tia, thank you for your assistance. You're highlighting the Blackboard help videos. And if you go ahead and click on that, Tia, this will take students to a playlist that our friends in IDA, Instructional Design and Access, have put together for us, and they range from a minute to 5 minutes. And you will see the very, very first one right there is viewing comments and feedback in Blackboard. And so if a student were to click on that, we're not going to watch it right now, but if a student were to click on that, that starts up a video on all the different ways in the platform that they would be able to see the comments that professors are making on their assignments. And so that's a really helpful collection. It's probably the most frequently asked questions about Blackboard. Another one right under there is sending an email to other students in Blackboard. That's one of the things that a lot of new students don't know that they have the ability to do. And it's a great way to be able to connect with students in their classes if they're interested in forming a study group, if that's something they're interested in. Below that one, sending an email to a professor, again, straight from Blackboard, quick 2-minute videos on how to do that, discussion board posts, submitting an assignment. So you can kind of see examples of what IDA has put together there on that playlist. So Again, you can get to that by just going to the website that's on the banner there on the screen, wichita.edu/student success, or just /success. Either one works. And you just go about maybe 2/3 of the way down to that Shocker Secrets to Success for that Blackboard Help videos link. Okay. There's also one of the frustrating things about Blackboard for students to understand is, and they've probably figured this out by now, is every professor organizes their information differently. Some will have a ton of options to the left a lot of them will have a welcome page and announcements and maybe different modules and all of that. Another professor may just have, here's my information, and it's a one click on the left menu. And so professors have a lot of flexibility, which is a great thing about the platform for those building classes. And one of the most frustrating things for students who are getting used to the platform for the first time to find where their information is. And because there's a lot of flexibility, faculty and students all use it, as they're comfortable. If they prefer to provide feedback one way, another professor might provide feedback another way. And so it's one of those things that students kind of have to learn as they go, right? So if your student is not hearing back, getting feedback from their professors, they need to get in contact with their instructor or their professor. They need to reach out, and we know that sometimes that's a little overwhelming and daunting, to think about as a student, especially if you're not used to that. We've got to have students start advocating for themselves and asking those questions. The faculty members should be responsive, know and have been asked to be responsive and quick to return questions and things that they're getting from their students. And so if they're having trouble finding the feedback, then they need to get in contact with their instructor and ask where they can find that, because it's different again in every single circumstance. So all right, so moving from Blackboard to Zoom, that is another platform that a lot of us are getting very used to, your students probably as well. They might be getting a little Zoom fatigue sitting in front of a screen. I certainly can relate to that, having been in my office all day and multiple hours in meetings. From the computer, I've seen more people online than I've seen in our office today. So I can definitely relate to them with that. But a few things to keep in mind, again, to provide those cues to professors that your student is engaged, they're listening, they're participating. Faculty don't always know when they're looking, if they're holding classes in Zoom, if they're looking at a solid screen of black squares, right? They're not exactly sure, especially if it's a larger class. It's very difficult to know who's engaged and who's attending. So a few things to keep in mind. First, your students should use the settings and have a profile picture, professional and appropriate profile picture linked to Zoom. If they can, that's the ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is actually to have your camera on. However, we know that that is not okay for some of our students, and that is okay that it's not okay. We can, definitely work with that, but a picture or some kind of appropriate image. I know, for instance, my son is in Teams right now with his school, and I see a lot of Xbox logos and gamer profile pictures and things like that of characters and different games and that kind of thing. And that's all fine. I would say a picture of your actual student is the best if they do not have their camera on. If they're joining from their phone, sometimes their phone number is showing up on that screen. Not sure that they want to provide that information on the screen to the rest of the students in their class. So we know that joining from their phone is, again, a reality for some of our students, and that's how they access their classes. But we want to, again, think about how can we present ourselves as professionally as possible, especially when the faculty can't see our faces, right? So again, a picture is best. If you don't want to do a picture, your student doesn't want to do a picture, putting your first name is fine, but you want to include a last initial. So make sure there could be more. For instance, there could be more than one Kim in the class. There could be more than one, Susie, whatever the case may be. So make sure that the faculty member can find them on a class roster of some sort if they are in fact taking attendance. I want to talk a little bit about backgrounds. Our campus has a lot of Shocker themed backgrounds that your students can use. Many times it's rather uncomfortable and a little intrusive to sit in a classroom, and have your camera on if the faculty member, well, they shouldn't be requiring it, but if the faculty member is asking that your camera is on or your student's camera is on, they have some options for some virtual backgrounds. The computer that they have does need to be updated enough to be able to accept those backgrounds and use those backgrounds, but there's options to blur, there's options to pretend you're on vacation behind you, lots of things to choose from. So they might want to explore that, especially if they're, sitting at a dining room table and they want to blur maybe the kitchen behind them out, or they're sharing a room or a space or a classroom space at home with someone, or a residence hall room with someone, and they just want to provide a little bit more privacy. Perfectly acceptable. We encourage students to do that if they are a little shy about kind of sharing their personal space and surroundings. There's also some other things in Zoom that can indicate that you're with it. I'm with you. Let's move on. I love this lecture. I'm enjoying class. And those are the reaction buttons. At the bottom, there's a little, if your student hovers under the kind of the bottom part of the screen, there's a little toolbar that comes up, and there's an option to do a thumbs up. There's an option to clap your hands, right? So that's another great way to signal, hey, I'm with you. I agree with you. I'm listening, those kinds of things. There is also a feature, and again, it kind of depends on what the faculty member sets up, but there is also another feature where you can raise your hand if you have a question. And I think that applies to both Zoom and Teams, again, depending on what level and what edition, if you will, of Zoom and Teams the faculty member is using. So lots of things to think about. I would also add in the chat boxes and the chat features, if like tonight we're saying type in your comments, put them in the chat box if you're on YouTube, or put them in the comments if you're on another platform. Students need to be professional. Text language is not appropriate. It's not appropriate for papers, which I've seen students writing papers like they're texting something. That's not appropriate for papers. It's also not appropriate for chats in college classes. So they need to be typing. Sometimes you have to kind of type fast to get your question out there and keep up with the lecture. And so it's a little bit of a juggling act there, but they need to keep their comments professional, respectful to one another as well. Again, I've seen some interesting chats come about in this virtual world. So students really need to think about the way that they are presenting themselves online. You never know who might become a faculty advisor to you, or you may need to, connect with them on research or something later in your college career. So really want to make sure that you present yourself as professionally and respectfully as possible. I want to switch to Microsoft Teams. That's another platform that some of our faculty use, but a lot of our advisors are using Teams. It's a little more private, although Zoom is perfectly fine for classes. Microsoft Teams is a great way to connect with your academic advisor, who can obviously help you for enrollment and different things, but can also help give you some tips for success as well. A lot of times our advisors will be working with students, and they might need to see a screen. They might need to see what the student is seeing so that they're on the same page. So they do a lot of screen sharing in Teams. There's screen sharing in Zoom, but not as often as with an advisor or a program coordinator or something like that among the staff on campus. And so that gives, again, it's more private. If you're sharing your screen, an advisor can walk the student through the process of, whatever it may be. They can, if they're having trouble logging on, they can say, click here, click there. Oh, I see what you're doing. That's not where you go, and walk them through that process. So your students' academic advisors will either, if they offer the virtual or choose more than a phone appointment, which I would encourage your students to do more than a phone appointment, I would encourage them to request Zoom or Teams appointments so that they can have that better connection with their advisors. Let's see. You can also blur your background in Teams, and recently I believe Teams came up with an update where they have some more exciting virtual backgrounds if you want balloons behind you or the beach or whatever mood you're in. Again, keep it appropriate for class and keep it appropriate for advising appointments and things like that. You're presenting yourself, so think about the way that you present yourself online as well. And I think that is what I wanted to talk about for the platforms. If you have specific questions about Blackboard, Zoom, or Teams, have something that your student is struggling with, go ahead and pop that in the comments, and we'll come back to those in a few minutes, okay? We'll switch gears a little bit and talk about some study skills and some time management. Tia, if you can go back to our website and bring that on the screen. Again, just the wichita.edu/success website. And then you can scroll down clear to the bottom of that page, and you'll see a link to our study skills. So right there with the light bulb is study tips. So if you click on that, go ahead, Tia, thank you. Lots of tips and things that we have online for students. There's no multitasking, right? We've linked some research to these tips that we have if you or your student is interested more in finding out more. But things like, you can't divide your attention among 6 things. Getting to class, go to class. You have to log in every time. And we know, again, students are getting very tired of the screen and that kind of thing. And we get it. Faculty and staff are as well. But you got to push yourself to get there, right? So lots of study tips and tricks. And so part 2 is there. If you go ahead and scroll down a little bit more, keep going. At the bottom of this page are links to specific study skills that our students find helpful. So note-taking, time management, organization, reading strategies, test-taking, memory strategies, lots of good stuff here. And just to show for an example, Tia, if you'll click on time, let's go do time management. Earlier today we did note-taking. If we do time management, got some tips there at the top, but go ahead and scroll down. This part right here, thank you, is just kind of a little calculator that we have students ask themselves. We all start with 168 hours. So how many hours are you in classes each week? How many hours are you studying each week? How much time do you spend eating? Because we know that nutrition is important, right? How many hours are you working? How many hours do you groom yourselves? Some students spend a lot of time doing that, and that's perfectly fine. Exercise, sleep, others, Netflix, Xbox, all of that. So at the end, a student can enter kind of on their own, kind of work through that, and then they have the time remaining for flexible scheduling at the bottom. So that's just a helpful tool that we try to use with students. Thanks, Tia. we try to use with students when we talk about time management, so that they understand what that breakdown looks like, because sometimes our students are a little bit more visual when they're looking at that, and sometimes our students don't have a lot of extra time at the end of the week, and so we work with them to set priorities. That's why at the top of that page, I think the first tip on the time management section was you have to set your priorities. Are you going to be a fully engaged college student? Are you going to do well, or are you just going to do as best you can, and you got some other things going on and they might be more fun, and where are you going to set your priorities? And the type of campus that we are, a lot of our students are helping out at home. A lot of our students are contributing to childcare at home. They are working, helping pay the bills at home. Other students are lucky and they don't have to, have those types of life roles or expectations. But a lot of our students do. And so we really have to talk through that with students. What is your ultimate goal? Is your goal to pass your classes, or is your goal to maximize your academic potential in your classes? And what are your long-term goals? Are you getting a degree, or are you getting into grad school? Are you getting into a competitive field where you have to go on and take more classes with more certifications, and it's you have to qualify for those levels of further education? Or are you here to check a box and say I went to college, right? So, and both are legitimate answers, right? We work with students who must have a 3.75 overall cumulative GPA at the minimum to apply to and be accepted to grad school or med school or law school, whatever that may be. And we have students who are like, I just need to pass math and I'm cool. And that's perfectly legitimate, totally fine. We can help you get there. But this all kind of comes back to, what is your ultimate goal? How are you going to set your priorities to get to that goal? And so lots of things that we can offer students to help them kind of keep that in mind. Know that your goal as a parent may be different than your student's goal, and that's hard to navigate. That's a hard conversation to have. Your expectations may be very different than your students' expectations. So having those conversations is really, really important, especially as midterms are rolling around and a lot of you out there paying the bills. So what is your expectation? How many times do they need to take that math class? You expect them to take it once, or is it okay if they repeat it, right? So those conversations you need to be having with your students, and checking in with them to make sure that their instruction and their academic experience is going okay for them. Right? Switching again gears a little bit here, talking about success and support in the classroom in regard to tutoring, supplemental instruction, and those programs. So I'll explain those two areas. We kind of serve as the central location, umbrella, place where you begin exploring tutoring options. Often a student can request a tutor if they're on campus. If they want to come by the Shocker Learning Center in person, they're welcome to do that. It's in 107 Linquist Hall. And there's somebody there that can help them figure out where they need to connect with a tutor. Or they can request a tutor straight from their portal, the MyWSU portal. In the student tools section, there's a link that will turn blue that says request a tutor. Click on that link and they go into our platform that will send us the request. And so that platform will walk them through, ask them questions. We'll bring up their class schedule, say which class do you need a tutor for. They click on the class. Some other questions. When are you available for tutoring? And so they answer those questions, enter the information. Our staff will look at that and then get them matched with a tutor as quickly as we can. Sometimes we have to find tutors. Sometimes our tutors get full about midterms. So if your student thinks that he or she might need a tutor, they need to make sure that they're putting in a request very quickly because our tutors are getting pretty full. If the class is offered remotely, tutoring is offered remotely, there are a few exceptions to that. A few of our tutors and SI leaders are meeting students one-on-one in person. But what we're finding is that students really prefer to do the tutoring online and virtually, and so our staff is set up for that. That's a one-on-one kind of traditional tutoring class. Our tutors have to have had the class here at WSU and have had to earn an A in the class. And so, know that we take a lot of pride in the quality of tutoring that we provide. Our program just became certified, so we're excited about that. And what that means is that you can have confidence and your students can have confidence in the level of experience they're going to have with a tutor. It is free. They're not paying anything for it. So that's something they definitely want to check out if they think they need help with content in the class. A couple of other areas that have tutoring are TRIO programs, which typically assist our first generation students, low income students. You have to qualify to be a part of those programs, but our student support services, our disability student support services, and our McNair program, if any of your students are first generation and looking at grad school, McNair is something to check out. All three of those programs offer mentoring and tutoring for the students who qualify and are part of their program as well. Our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, through their PASS program, has tutoring options and opportunities as well. So there's lots of pockets on campus that exist where students can get tutoring, but you can start with us and we can help them plug into those kind of opportunities on campus. If they're not being met by any other existing resource, then we're happy to help them. If we don't have a tutor for a specific subject, we'll work with a faculty member to try to identify someone. Sometimes that takes a little time. But typically we can have that done within 2 weeks, which goes back to one of the points that we made earlier earlier today, which is you have to be ready. You have to be planning in advance. A student can't just say request a tutor and then 5 minutes later be in a tutoring session. It's not how we're set up. It's not how it works quite yet. We'd love to be able to do that, but a lot of students will come and tell us, I need a tutor and I have a test tomorrow. It's like, that's unfortunate because it takes a little bit of time to work those out. We have to connect it. We got to find the tutor who has the time, who can service, that class, and we got to match the two of you. And it's not just, hey, stop by in 15 minutes and we're going to help you out. It's not institutor, as I refer to it. You got to plan in advance. And so, especially if it's a higher level course that your student is needing assistance in. So that's probably enough about tutoring. If you have other questions about that, pop it in the comments. And then we do also run the supplemental instruction program. And while that is a form of tutoring, that supplemental instruction program is connected to specific classes. That's a support that is connected to historically difficult courses, and it's organized a little different. So if your student is in a class with supplemental instruction, they know they have supplemental instruction. The only reason they would not know is if they are not logging on, they're not attending class, and they're not in Blackboard. So typically our 100, 200 level courses in biology and chemistry, lots of courses. I think we're at about over 100 courses that we support through supplemental instruction. And the tutor in that, or the supplemental instruction leader in that course, will hold free weekly review sessions every week. Of according to when the students in the class are free for those. And again, they happen virtually, unless the class is in person, and then there will be some exceptions to that. But those students, again, it's a little bit different from tutoring because those SI leaders are actually attending the class with the student. And they've taken the class before, they're taking it again. They're really modeling how you become and how you are supposed to be a model student. And they will facilitate those. We train our tutors and our SI leaders to identify if a student may be having, maybe lacking in study skills versus content. They may understand the content, but they just don't know how to study very well. You know, their notes are a mess. Tests kind of freak them out a little bit. You know, they get really nervous about that. They don't know how to approach the professor. They don't know what to expect on the exam. And that is almost more about study skills than it is the actual content of the class. And so our tutors and SI leaders kind of weave in study skills as they are helping students understand content a little bit better. So wanted to talk about those two programs. I did see a banner across the screen there. I wanted to back up just a little bit and talk about, again, time management. We're talking about tutoring and SI sessions and when that all happens and balancing the schedule. There are planners available, free planners available from Student Affairs right there. You can pick them up in the Radigan Student Center, room 231. And I'll keep going down this time management train here again for a minute, or trail here for a minute. If your student doesn't have a schedule, a structure yet that they have been working on, and they really need to find something that works for them. In my day, and many of the professionals that I work with, we had the planners that I know a lot of the K-12 students get at their schools, the kind of the weekly planner, and you plan out your days, and we wrote it down. For me, if I write it down, I'm much more likely to remember it. And so that is how I was used to planning. It took me a little while to make the transition to Outlook, right? An Outlook calendar, a Google calendar, an electronic calendar of some sort. Your student needs to find something that really, really works for them. So those free planners, if your student is a paper pen person, free planners in Student Affairs in the RSC room 231, that's a great option for them. And it has a lot of things already kind of written down for them as far as things that are happening when midterms are, finals, and things like that. So it gives them a little guidance that they don't have to worry about. But a lot of students, as I know Tia mentioned earlier, are using their phone for their reminders, which is perfectly fine. If they can find a system, if it's their phone, awesome. If it's just an Excel sheet where they organize their assignments and their projects and their exams in a calendar fashion, that's great. Again, planning is key, especially for people who are a little bit more visual. I'm a visual person. I have to write it down. I have to see it. Usually people learn in multiple modalities. So we want to make sure that, yes, you can type your notes, but then you can write them, and then you can read them and hear them. And there's different kinds of strategies that they can use, right? So same thing goes for planning your time, reminding yourself of when your exams are, when your SI session is, when you're meeting with your tutor, when your advising appointment is. And so somewhere where they can capture that in one place is ideal. So if they need help with that, we're happy to help them out. All right. And then I want to mention success coaches and peer coaches. Along these lines of time management and study skills, we have peers, as I mentioned earlier today and already tonight. Sometimes students work better and respond better to their peers. I can tell them all day that they need to have a study schedule. They don't believe me until someone has been sitting in that seat much more recent than I have. and they can say, I know I struggled with that class too. And this is how I made my time work for me. This is how I studied, and this is what worked for me. And so we've got those peer coaches who can meet with students. Our success coaches can also do that. They are full-time professionals, staff members who can work with students either. We see a lot of procrastination, we see a lot of organization, prioritization, time management, all of it. It kind of is all related, right? Because what's going on in other places of your life kind of trickle into your academic life and vice versa. So we get it, it all goes together, and sometimes students just need help managing it, organizing it, balancing it, and those are what those peer coaches and success coaches can help with. So we have a success coach that is assigned to each academic college, and so it's very likely that some of your students may have already heard from their success coach, maybe not everybody, and that's okay. But if you're interested, or if your student needs a little bit of accountability help, or just, again, someone to check in with, might just be as quick as sending a text once a week, every Tuesday, or whenever their established time is, to just say, how's it going? Are you doing okay? Anything coming up that you need help with? And maybe it's as easy as that. It can range from that to every week an hour session with a success coach, and this is where we can really fine tune some of those study skills. We also have an online assessment called the LASSI, LASSI, Learning and Study Skills Inventory. And this is an online assessment students can take that can help them identify some areas that they might need improvement in their study habits, and online modules to help kind of improve those skills. So if it's note-taking, test prep, things like that, organization, memorization, we've got some online help that they can get and work totally independent from us on their own if they want, or with the help of a peer coach that can help them fine tune those skills. So that's also available if your students might need that level of support. So I'm going to stop and ask Tia if there are any questions that have come in, maybe what she sees with a lot of the student leaders and the students who are involved on campus, and see maybe if she's got some questions that have come up. Doesn't look like there have been any comments.
So we don't have any questions at this time. And I know, Kim, when we spoke earlier, we talked about kind of isolation and what can our families do to help support those students when they're not feeling connected?
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me. That is something that our coaches are hearing from students, is that, I don't know how to connect with the people in my classes, and I'm kind of alone here, and I'm not sure what to do about that. So I want to make sure that, first of all, students understand that campus is not closed to them. We encourage students to come to campus. A couple of the examples that we talked about earlier, if your students will email other students in their class, again, they can do that through Blackboard. Most likely, the professor, I think, has the option to turn that off, but I don't think most know that they can turn that off, and I don't think most do. I think it's a pretty common kind of thing. So if they're interested in a study group, it takes a certain amount of courage to send an email to students in the class, but even if you just, identify, your students know who the motivated students are in the class, and that's who they want to study with. If they're going to do the best that they can, they want the most motivated students. So they know who those people are. They can email them and just say, is anybody interested in getting together on campus, or maybe a separate Zoom or Teams kind of thing? I have a friend who's in a rather difficult course in a PhD program, and the students, even at that level, were kind of having trouble understanding what was being asked of them, and and she emailed the other students in the class and said, look, I'm not getting it. Is anybody else confused? And, within a couple hours, they were all on Zoom talking to each other, trying to interpret different things and help each other out. And then they were all, this has been so great. Thanks. And they felt much more confident about what they were doing. And that's at a PhD level as well. So this stuff doesn't go away. They need to really try to make those connections. And again, it takes a certain amount of courage to do that. And we know that. But you'd be surprised that if your student has a question, the odds are other people have a question as well. It just takes a brave soul to, reach out to others and say, hey, is anybody else confused? Does anybody else want to study before the exam? That's another great excuse. Hey, an exam's coming up. I'd love to study with some people just to kind of review material, make sure that we have all of our there's no big gaps in our notes together. Are you interested in meeting? The other thing is, I think people, or students, especially those that live in the local or surrounding area, feel like maybe they can't come to campus physically. And that's not the case. While the weather is still manageable outside, not too hot, not too cold, might be a little muggy, but we can get past that, right? Have a small group of students together, just for a study hall. They could do a study hall. They could be all studying separate subjects, or it could be the same subject, or they could, meet on the lawn and all log in, use the Wi-Fi. It works outside too. Use the Wi-Fi, log on to class, and maybe be sitting out of the building where the instructor is teaching, but it's a little bit different. They can have a little bit of connection with other students in their classrooms. They might not be sitting in the classroom, and it might not be the entire class, but it's some kind of connection to campus physically, and another human connection with some other folks from class. So those are just a couple of the ideas. Tia, I know you mentioned earlier the involvement fair that you had in person and virtual. If we're trying to make connections and find students that have similar interests, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll say before I talk about that too, I noticed, because I work in the Radigan Student Center for folks who don't know, and there are a lot of great spaces on campus for students to come to campus to actually do their coursework. There's this gentleman that I think every Wednesday he sits outside of our office and in the lobby area, and he's got his earpods in, and he's doing math class. And whether it's in the Radigan Student Center or the library, or if it's outside, there's a lot of great, really quiet spaces for students to really be able to separate and focus. I know if I lived at home, that would probably be one of my biggest struggles, would be that ability to focus. And so tell them to come to campus, get in their cars and come to the RSC or come to the library. If focus is something that they need and they need that quiet, then this is the opportunity for them to make that connection back to campus, but also have a space that supports them. The other thing that Kim just mentioned were events and things on campus. Events are still happening. We are located in the RSC. There's programs that happen throughout the week. The university calendar, I'll share with you in a second, is chock full of events and things that are going on. And if students are looking for something, they can find it here. So this is the main page of the Wichita State website. And if you scroll down past all these jazzy images, you'll see latest WSU news as well as upcoming events. So you can get here's what's happening on campus, but this upcoming events sends you to a calendar. And this calendar function, if your students are like, I don't know what's going on campus, they receive a newsletter every Monday, Wednesday, and I believe it's either Thursday or Friday, called Shocker Blast. And that sends messages and news about events and programs that are happening directly to their WSU inbox. That is another reason why they should be checking their Wichita State email address. In addition to this website has all of these events and activities that are going on. Our office is hosting a movie series. We've got tomorrow at Cessna Stadium, we're showing Bring It On. We're hosting homecoming. We're doing some pop-in events, some virtual events. We're doing trivia online, bingo online, which they can actually win some pretty good prizes. So our trivia nights, I think you can win like $50 gift cards to Amazon. But all of those programs are going to be found in this calendar. If they just make the next step to connect with that calendar and find that information, or even if you have to browse the calendar themselves and maybe give them a reminder, because that's what it takes. It's taking a village at this time to let those students know that there are connections and there are things out there, whether they're in person, virtual, or socially distanced. There's a lot going on campus as we continue to support your student, both academically and socially.
I would also add there's lots to do. If your student is new to Wichita, the Wichita area, there's lots of things to do still in the city. On the family, on the parent and family Facebook group, I think it was, we listed some things we're worried about Labor Day and students feeling like, oh, I'm stuck here. I don't have any, so we put together a list of things that they can do. If they have a pet, well, okay, if they're living on campus, they probably don't have a pet, but they're living locally. Um, we have a lot of pet pathways on campus that they can bring their pet to campus and do a walk. There's the Love Locks pod that they can go sit at, and if they have a padlock. Students and faculty and staff and alums and anybody is welcome to go to that area. It's right by a fountain. It's really great. A lot of students and staff and faculty, community members will go and kind of have lunch on the lawn and put their lock on the Love Lock pod, and just some interesting, unique things that they might not think about. The keeper behind me, my image is flipped. So behind me here, this little silver guy here is the keeper of the plains, and there's statues around the city of Wichita. There's a map that they can find in the city of Wichita to find all of them. They're all decorated different. We have one in the RSC, and so they can find the keepers, is what they call that. And then lots of things. Our Ulrich Museum, actually, because the museum is not open, it's really pretty narrow, and what is available through the museum. They have a billboard collection of art, and so on their website, they have where those billboards are across the city. And you can look for the billboards, the art billboards, if your student is interested in art. So lots of things. I think something we mentioned earlier, we sometimes have to help students reframe what their idea of the perfect traditional college experience is. Nobody really, and a large majority of campuses across this country right now, students are not having the normal traditional college experience. We're not the only ones, they're not the only college students that is having trouble kind of navigating this and figuring this out. It's pretty common. And so I think as parents, you can help us and we can help you help your student by kind of reframing what they think might be a traditional experience to them, right? So thinking about maybe I'm going to go hang out on one of the hammocks outside. Again, while the weather's nice, they should be taking advantage of that, because it's not going to be nice forever, and we know that. But while it's a great opportunity to enjoy some of the outdoor spaces on campus, whether it's completely through a social outlet or, again, a study group, or logging into class and going to class in the hammock sounds pretty appealing right now. But it's nice weather, so what doesn't? Outside. So lots still happening. We just have to help, again, kind of reframe what the college experience is looking like. So as we're kind of running down on time, you have a banner for tomorrow's session. So again, cultivating an environment of belonging. That's really, really important. We really want students to feel welcome and feel like they have a place here. That's important to us. And so if they are feeling like they are not, tune in tomorrow, and you can hear from our folks and partners in ODI, diversity and inclusion, to talk about some of those issues and talk through those issues and how your student can feel like they belong if they're struggling with that. The last thing I will mention is enrollment for spring is right around the corner. So our faculty have, again, based on their experience this fall, have made some decisions about some of their spring classes and are in the process of kind of figuring out what that will look like. Enrollment will begin in November, and it is almost October, folks. So advising centers will begin to meet with students in October, so it's not too early to have your students call. If they are first-year students, they will be required to have a second semester advising appointment with their first-year advisor in One Stop. If they are transfer students or continuing students, they'll want to connect with their academic advisor in their college, depending on their major. That could be a faculty member, that could be a staff member. Each college and each program has different requirements on advising, but it is always in your students' best interest to meet with an advisor every semester to make sure that they are staying on track. The last thing, the things that we hate to hear the most are, well, my friend took this class and they said that it counted, and so I'm just going to go ahead and take it because I don't have to see my advisor, so I'm just going to take it, and then finding out that, well, your friend was wrong and it wasn't quite the same major that you had. You might have thought so, but it wasn't. So we don't want students to advise themselves and then get themselves in a bind because for whatever the reason the class sequencing then gets off for their major. So we always advise students to meet with their advisor to make sure they are on track to get through in the amount of time that they are expected and that you expect them to get through and to be successful. So have them contact their advisor. You can find all of the advising contact information at wichita.edu/advising, and that will break it down. Or if you're a first-year student, or if your student is a continuing student or a transfer student, they'll connect with the advisor in their academic college. So make sure that they're planning ahead. And then wanted to also mention, midterms is coming up as well. Usually midterm and enrollment kind of start at the same time. So it's always that's always a good indicator of the signal that it's time to plan ahead. But midterms is coming up, and a lot of students kind of freak themselves out about midterms. It doesn't have to be. It's kind of this, we work ourselves up into this midterms is crazy and I should be stressed and all of that. It really shouldn't be stressed. A lot of our faculty have redesigned classes to have lower stakes assignments, meaning, again, as parents, for those of us who have been through the college process, in the olden days, we had a class and it was a midterm and it was a final, and it was half my grade was one and half the grade was the other, and that was it. We're really trying to encourage faculty, and there are very few faculty. That would be an exception, not really the rule now. Encouraging them to have more assignments, more projects, more smaller stakes, lesser stakes exams and assignments as students and faculty, as we're all making that transition to remote and online learning and teaching. And so midterms, don't let your students get caught up in the I should be stressed because that's what I've been told and that's what people tell me that I'm supposed to be stressed. They're not stressed. They're not stressed. They're going to class. They're doing their notes. They're reviewing their exams after they get their feedback. They're doing things like that. Midterms is a piece of cake. Same thing with finals. Don't let your students stress out about finals. If they're in class every day, if they are paying attention, actively engaging with the information, with the content from class, finals is a breeze. It's a show what you know. You show up. Here's everything I learned. I've prepared for this. And it shouldn't be this kind of freaked out, kind of thing. Now, given that, there's some anxiety with exams, and we do understand that, and that is a real thing. And so we can help students again with our test taking and test prep information, as well as our folks. If your students do have anxiety around exams, they should have already kind of been through. Usually about this time, one wave of exams has already hit, and so they know a little bit more what to anticipate potentially. But knowing what kinds of questions, what kinds of tests, what kinds of things do I need to be ready for? Is my technology working? Am I, at a place where I'm confident in that I can log on, do my stuff, and go? Again, the key is planning. If you're planning ahead, should be a breeze, right? Midterms is just the 8th week of the semester. That's all it is. That's all it needs to be. So if they're, really kind of stressing out about that, we can help them out. So again, a reminder to pick up free planners if your student needs one to help them organize their time. We'd love to be able to give them that resource. We've got a lot, and so we want them to make sure that they take advantage of it. So any other questions, Tia, as we're wrapping up?
That is it. You've done a very thorough job, Kim.
Excellent. Love to hear that. At any point in time, if you all need to get a hold of me, I think Tia's going to pull up my email probably. Yes. Thanks, Tia, for the assist tonight and today, and for the tech backup and support. Kim.Sandlin at wichita.edu. You're welcome to reach out. I'm happy to talk with your student, help you navigate it as you're helping your student become more academically successful. Happy to be a partner in that with you. So thank you all so much. Thanks, Tia, for hosting. And let us know if you need our help.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kim. I'm going to pop you out of here. Okay. And I just want to remind folks that tomorrow's program at noon and 6 p.m. is Cultivating an Environment of Belonging with our staff and friends at the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. So we hope you tune in and stick with us for the remainder of the week. Thank you so much, everybody.